Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Alex Swenson, Shane McClure, along with me here today. Excited to talk to you about some best practices for hegemons. And maybe you're watching this as a current hegemon. Maybe you're watching this as somebody who might want to be a hegemon in the future. Maybe you're watching this as an unbiased third party who just wants to help your chapter hegemon be successful. But at any rate, we're excited today to just share a little bit about what exactly it is the hegemon does and what he should be focused on. We're going to talk some best practices. What are some things that a hegemon can be doing to really elevate himself and elevate that position in the chapter. And we're going to talk about what are some qualities that you should look for in a hegemon. What are some attributes as far as, individual traits go of somebody that you might want in that position. So to get started, I'll kick it over to Shane to talk a little bit about roles and responsibilities, and we'll go from there.
Appreciate it, Alex. So this is Shane McClure. The roles and responsibilities, to cite our sources here, are coming from the Black Book, coming from the resource guides on officer transition. So if you want to follow up there, there's good places to start. So new member educator, first responsibility is preparing members, both active and new members, to be the most effective people that they can be. Included in that is making the process easy for them, having a concise process that's easy for them to follow along, something that you can share during recruitment so that they're aware of what they're getting into, and so that they know all the pieces and expectations along the way for the requirements of membership. Some of the other opportunities are with the blueprint, and I know Alex is going to dive into that a little bit later as a structure, something that's already in place to get some ideas on how to educate and create this experience. The hegemon is also in charge of the big brothers, not only selection of them, but making sure that they are helping him along the process of ushering these new men into the chapter, as well as keeping the active chapter involved in the new member process. And with that, again, it's the ongoing education of the chapter, making sure that people are always pursuing that next step, either with the understanding of TEAC or within their own life, pushing the boundary and going to that next level. So again, these are some of the core goals for the hegemon position. Now Alex is going to dive into ways to be more efficient within the role.
Yeah, thank you. And I think the first thing as it relates to new member education in that process is to consistently be evaluating how effective your candidate education is. Don't just do the same thing year in and year out that you've always done, because that's what the hegemon did before you. That's the tradition of the chapter. Really take a deep dive into how you're educating your candidates and evaluate the strengths and weaknesses of your program. New member education is not just memorizing information out of the TEAC guide. It is to serve as an onboarding process. Think about if you start a new job or an internship, you take 3 or 4 days or a week sometimes to learn about the organization, its values, its objectives. This is the same thing for TEAC. When you start a new job, they don't just make you memorize the mission statement and then set you loose, right? They give you the tools that it takes to be effective in your position. And so if there's a blind spot in your education program, if there's something that you are regularly seeing your new members struggle with, maybe every year you lose 3 or 4 new members because of grades, or maybe you see your new members struggling with balancing the stresses of college and their course load, that's an opportunity to bring someone in to talk at a higher level about academic success, about mental health. You as the hegemon, that's your job, is to look over that process and make sure that your new members are not only acclimating to TEAC and onboarding to TEAC, but they're acclimating and onboarding to life as a college student. And that's what we offer as a fraternity. So from the first day they step in the door, we should be thinking about how we're preparing our candidates to not only attack their 4 years as an undergraduate member of the fraternity, how they're going to attack their 4 years as an undergraduate in college, and how they're going to continue to contribute to the chapter and to TEAC after they're initiated and after they graduate. So that's really the first, I think, and most important thing you can do is evaluate that program, check in with past initiates. What did they like? What did they not like? What do they think went well? What do they think, could have gone better? And use that to rebuild the program every single year. Shane, what else you got for us?
No, those are great points. I like the ability and encouraging people to be creative with it and make it their own, alongside with helping them understand the fraternity and how it relates to the other parts of their life. You know, we're a values-based organization. We offer more to the college experience than I would say some other clubs and organizations on campus. So make sure that you're diving into that with your new members. Same as Alex was saying of evaluating yourself. Give them the opportunity to use Teak's values to evaluate themselves. You know, we have the mission of the fraternity. We have Declaration of Principles, opportunity out of defeat, all of these doctrines that talk about how we can be the best that we can be. You know, make that the focus of it and how you can translate that into regular day life. Some of these things were written over 100, 120 years ago. It's going to take some more time, and it's worth the conversation to help these new members understand, you know, this is how the mission impacts my grades or impacts my relationships with my fellow frauders. Encouraging that connection is going to make the experience a lot more real for them. Alongside that is some of the logistic pieces. And, you know, this is something that's still a huge responsibility for not only the Hegemon, but for all officers. There are requirements to make sure that our candidates are in a good place. So making sure that they validate their information. They're going to get an email as soon as they're put into the system. Make sure that they complete e-compliance so that they're up to date on our risk management policies. You know, maybe they're not thinking about how being in a fraternity could pose some potential risks or how your behavior should change. That's a good opportunity to have that conversation that they're now representing a bigger whole than just themselves. And then you have the candidate and initiate fee. You know, we as an organization, we are different in the fact that we are asking people to pay into this experience. Make sure that they understand not only how to manage that and have that financial and budgeting aspect, but also the value that they're getting out of it, the resources of the educational experiences, headquarters staff, volunteers, all of the online resources. Make sure that they're aware of that so they understand what they're paying into. And finally, make sure that you're up to date with any university requirements, making sure grade checks are done. Likely universities have meetings for new members that go around hazing that they have to attend. You know, your job being the Hegemon and the person who's been in this experience is to ferry them along through things that they've never been to before, uncharted territory. So make sure you can compile that. And, you know, at that point, it's just a check mark to make it easy for them so that they can get to the good stuff. And again, we have a no hazing policy here. So the risk management or e-compliance will go through that. Most universities have a no hazing agreement or a meeting that they'll have to have. You as the Hegemon, it is your responsibility being the front man for the new member process to make sure the rest of the chapter understands that. You know, in recent years, there have been many different state laws. So brush up on your knowledge of that. Talk with your university, you know, fraternity, sorority, life advisor or conduct office on making sure that the activities that you have are values-based and they're not falling into the, you know, the murky waters of a negative experience for them. And this goes back to Alex's first point of checking in with the candidates after they're initiating. You know, what things were good, what things were bad, what things should we stay away from. Giving yourself that opportunity to check back and get a third perspective is going to help keep you away from any of those negative behaviors.
Thanks, Shane. And a couple final things as far as best practices go. We talk about the importance of the Hegemon as a member educator, not just a new member educator. And that's where a lot of Hegemons, I think, fall short. They get through candidate education and then they just kind of ride out the rest of the semester, the rest of the school year, not really understanding what they should be doing. And so a few ideas for that. The first is the blueprint. That is always a possibility, and that is always on the table. The blueprint includes a lot of really good information about how to get guys engaged beyond their initiation. What are some things they can go out and do in their community that are going to push them to become better? What are some Teak pieces, some Teak information that they can really grab a hold of and benefit from as a sophomore, junior, senior? So consider the blueprint, and certainly if you're more interested in that, reach out to myself, reach out to our office, and we'll help you work through that process. Other options are finding ways around campus to educate your membership. Once again, you're not just the TEAC educator. You're responsible for growing and developing the members in all aspects of their life. So are there special speakers, campus administrators, faculty members, alumni from the chapter who have expertise in a certain area? That could be finance, that could be budgeting, that could be searching for jobs, finding internships. We talked a little bit about mental health earlier. Are there really good leaders that have come out of the chapter that are alumni now that could come back and talk about their leadership journey to the entire chapter, not just the new members? That's how you continue to educate the men who are already part of TEAC, and ensure that they don't just plateau after they get educated as candidates. So once again, it goes back to the emphasis of being creative, of putting together a plan ahead of time so that you don't get through new member education and just sit around and wonder, hey, what the heck do I do next? Another piece of that is allowing our office to help continue to educate your members through province forums, RLCs, Leadership Academy, Conclave. Coming to TEAC programs is a huge, huge part of the TEAC process. You learn a lot about things from outside of your bubble. You gain new perspectives. You're interacting at Conclave and RLC with TEACs from all over the country and learning about how they function. And maybe you're a 30-man chapter that wants to get to 60, and you can go have a conversation with a 60-man chapter, a 100-man chapter, and learn how they recruit, how they build their brotherhood, how they budget. All of those things are possible, but you have to take that initiative to go out and get better and improve yourself, not just as a Hegemon, but as the person who's responsible for improving the education of the entire chapter. And then the last big thing as it relates to the position of Hegemon is getting that transition right. Officer transitions are huge, and making sure that you have a system in place to transition from one Hegemon to the next is vitally important in the long-term success of the chapter. If every single Hegemon approaches their year in office separately with their own systems, with their own ideas, there's never going to be any continuity. And every single new member class that comes through your chapter is going to be educated differently. There's not going to be that cohesion. So make sure that officer transition is in place. And again, if that's something you need help with, if you need to create a better system, let our office help you, let our staff help you, because we have experience and we want to make sure that the officer transitions are taking place at a high level. A few final thoughts, qualities of a good Hegemon. Once again, this could be you personally, things that you might need to work on or think about. This could be looking at filling the position in the future and who's a guy in the chapter that could be a great Hegemon. Here's some things to look for. First, what are you motivated by? Hopefully you're motivated by educating, by influencing the next generation of TEACs, by taking men who know nothing about the fraternity and making sure that they have a knowledge base that's going to allow them to affect the chapter in a positive way. You should not be influenced by power. You should not be influenced by the desire to have people respect you just because of a title. That's where we get into some of that hazing that Shane talked about. If the Hegemon just walks in and says, yes, I'm in, all the pledges respect me now, and I can make them do whatever I want, that's a really, really poor start to any officer position, but specifically Hegemon. So hopefully you're influenced by that desire to educate and make people better. Hopefully you want to be a positive role model. You want to be someone that other people can look up to and can look to mimic in some sense. And you've had a good experience in the chapter, and your new members look at you and say, yeah, that's a journey that I can follow. That's someone that has carved a path that I want to follow on. That's another big piece of being a Hegemon. And then having a strong understanding of TEAC's history and TEAC's values, as we already shared. Understand what the Declaration of Principles means to our fraternity, what the opportunity out of defeat did for Tau Kappa Epsilon, and how that relates to what you're doing in your individual circumstance. So having that understanding of TEAC's history and TEAC's values is extremely important, because you can use that to craft a new member education program that, as Shane said, reflects the values that we want in our members.
The last couple pieces that you should look for a new member educator is somebody who's comfortable being involved in recruitment. I know some chapters that I've worked with, they don't want their candidates to meet the Hegemon until the process starts. I think that's can lead into some bad areas, specifically in terms of advertising what the new member process will be. You want to make sure that they're comfortable with the relationship with the person who's going to be headlining that. So making sure that your Hegemon can be present in recruitment, meeting these people, welcoming them, because that's the person that they're going to be primarily working with for the next 5 to 6 to 8 weeks. You need to make sure that person is able to have the same personality from the beginning to the end, because this is for the benefit of the new members. We want to make sure that they're comfortable in it. And lastly, being comfortable taking that feedback and being able to, as Alex said at the beginning, look back and constantly reflect upon things to do better. We don't want this to be somebody who is in it for themselves, as Alex was saying. We want somebody who's willing to make it about the new members. This is the person who is going to be working with big brothers. They're going to be working with the rest of the chapter. Everybody's going to have their feedback. Alumni are going to have their feedback. You have to be willing to take that in a constructive way and make adjustments as needed, and be willing to say, that's a good idea. I'm willing to do that, make those kind of concessions. So all of these pieces are things to look at. And, maybe if you have somebody who wants to be a Hegemon who hasn't worked with managing or looking over a group of people, maybe we give them a different role on a committee to see how they delegate, to see how they work with different opinions coming in, and then maybe promote them to Hegemon or encourage them to run later. But I think having that experience of working with a group of people who you're completely in charge of, we got to make sure that we can trust those people to act in a way that's going to be beneficial for the new members and not just for themselves.
Absolutely. And hopefully what we've shared today will help you identify those individuals and help you pick the next Hegemon of the chapter, and pick someone who's going to do a great job, but also pick someone who's going to lay a base down, lay the groundwork to build on for the next Hegemon and the Hegemon after that. Because as we talked about, that continuity, that consistency in your new member education program, not just doing the same thing year after year, but having a commonality in values and in process is very, very important, because it allows all of the classes, freshmen, sophomores, juniors, seniors, and even alumni, to have a shared understanding and a shared experience that is so important when you're building brotherhood and building long-term success for a chapter. If you're looking to educate yourself as a Hegemon, a few resources for you. First, the Officer Transition Guide. You can go to tke.org/guides. The Officer Transition Guide has a really useful, just one-page rundown of what goes into being a Hegemon. It has some of what we talk about today. It has some other information, so hopefully you take a look at that. Use the Candidate Education Guide. It's in the same place, tke.org/guides. That lays out a 6-week new member education program in very great detail. And maybe you look at that and say, yeah, I want to do this. This is what we're doing. Maybe you look at it and say, hey, I really like what we're doing, but I'm going to pull some pieces from this guide to implement in for the next new member class. Either way, at least go give that a look, because again, it'll give you a fresh perspective and it'll give you some other things to think about. And then lastly, the TEAT guide. If you're the one that's teaching the TEAT guide to your new members, you should read through it and you should know what's in there and you should know what to expect and what's coming. Again, putting specific emphasis on some of our history, some of our important documents, the Declaration of Principles, opportunity out of defeat, the charge, those items that have been so crucial to who we are as an organization. I really think you should spend a little time on and understand what they mean to TEAC and what they can mean to your chapter. So Candidate Education Guide, Officer Transition Guide, and the TEAC Guide, I'd really encourage you to go give those a look and refresh yourself if you have not done so lately. That is all for us here today. Appreciate your time. Appreciate the collaboration with Shane. Do you have anything else for us, Shane?
One last thing is just to remember that, we often say that a chapter can be made or broken by a recruitment class. And I think that goes even further into how you educate them. You can recruit a solid group of people, but if your education isn't what you had recruited based on, you're going to lose out on them. So take the time to really reflect on the seriousness on, the people that you're bringing into this will be in charge of your chapter in a couple of years, in a couple short years, really. And to take this seriously, to do the best that you can to prepare them for the future of your chapter and the fraternity.
Absolutely. Thank you all again. Hopefully this was useful, beneficial. Please reach out to myself, Shane, anyone at our office if you have any further questions, and have yourself a great day. Goodbye.
Have a good one.